Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lurking for Legends, a live video cast where we talk with people from all walks of the publishing industry. I'm Christy Stratus, historical fantasy and historical suspense author, and my awesome co-hosts are, oh my God, I just mixed up the names and the genres, excuse me, epic fantasy author Richard H. Stevens and sci-fi author David M. Kelly. I almost said David M. Kelly's sci-fi as... So
David M.
Lurking for
Stevens
Legends.
and Richard H. Kelly.
Yeah,
We're working
Richard
on
H. Kelly.
We're working on Dave to get some dragons in his books.
David M. Stevens, yeah. It's not a bad name. Lurking for Legends is an interactive broadcast, and we encourage viewers to chime in and leave questions for our guest or comment on anything you hear in the show. So tonight, we're going to be interviewing someone who you are already familiar with, Bruce Hanson. And we're also going to be doing a live read of his. Super exciting because we love our live reads, as you all know. So welcome, Bruce. We're so glad to have you here.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Hi, Bruce.
Yeah.
Hi.
Absolutely. So why don't you start out by telling us just a little bit about yourself for anybody who didn't happen to be here last time?
Okay. From a writing perspective, I'm a multi-genre, multi-age writer in terms of target. I have a children's book, illustrated book that hopefully will be out before Christmas. We'll see. I have short stories, which again are multi-genre, everything from historical romance to literary to psychological, twisted murder mysteries, and kind of everything in between. And really all ages, young adult. The age group I don't really target is middle grade. So if for some reason I jumped over that one, but yeah, cover everything else. It just depends what I have to be thinking about those days. So, and non-writing, I'm retired, was an electrical engineer. My claim to fame is having worked on the Space Shuttle Canadarm for 3 months, but not a long time.
Yay.
But I have the pin to prove it.
Nice.
So, and yeah, I just, it's, writing isn't something that that I was interested in when I was at school and doing university stuff, but I transitioned into it, and it's one of my loves right now. So
That's fantastic. And so you do a lot of different genres, different ages. Is it just like kind of whatever strikes you in the moment? Is it stuff that you see around where you're like, oh, I just discovered something historical, I really want to write about that, or something like that?
it's it's a little bit of both. My writing started I'm a pantser. So I don't plot. I don't have an idea what I'm writing about. And initially, when I started my writing journey, that's exactly what I did. I would clear my mind, do a bit of a meditation with the keyboard in front of me, open my eyes and start typing.
Wow.
And the story went wherever it went. I wrote a whole novel that way, never knowing what the next page was going to be. As I got into stuff, now I tend to have things that tweak me. And kind of like Stephen King, he, in his book on writing, he talks about how he asks the question, what would happen if? And I've just, through things that have happened, things have popped in my mind. My story, Twins, was, well, what if there was a bad twin and a good twin? Not an original idea, but I wonder what if, and sat down and wrote my first adult short story, Twins, which went on to be third place in the Muskoka library writing contest.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's really where I come from. I don't plan anything. Sometimes there's a trigger, sometimes there isn't.
So
you're in good company here.
Yeah, no kidding. We're all pantsers, I think.
Yeah.
You aren't you, Christy? But so that first book you were talking about, where you just sat down and you started writing, you had no idea you were going from chapter to chapter. Did you actually end up publishing that book, or?
No, I did try. I did a whole bunch of things. I had not taken any courses, so I didn't know how to get published. So I did everything you weren't supposed to do, and it got me.
That's the best teacher, though, isn't it?
Sorry?
That's the best teacher, though, isn't it?
Yes, but I got further with that book, even though I'm going to one day possibly rewrite it, like modernize it. And the writing, going back and looking at it, wasn't that bad. I mean, it wasn't horrible. It certainly needed a big edit. But I ended up into a Canadian agent or publisher who, because the power went off in her building, went to work and read my whole novel that weekend in air conditioning because it was hot summertime.
Wow.
And, you're not supposed to send stuff kind of unsolicited. You can, but you're supposed to send a self-addressed, back in those days, return envelope. I didn't do that. It was a printed manuscript because it was back in the old days. And she read the whole thing. She sent me back a letter with ideas, things I can look at. It was like a 3-page letter, and things to work on, and etc. And I did that with a whole bunch of people. I ended up tracking down Robert Ludlum. I don't think I told you this story the last time, but it was this, having written this novel, which was, Ludlum was my favorite author then, and it was an international intrigue. So I thought, who better to talk to than Ludlum? But there's no way to get hold of this guy. So I thought, how would he do it? And I went through one of his books, and his picture, there's a photograph of him, of course, and his dog, I think it was, with the credits of this photographer. And I knew he lived from his write-ups in Naples, Florida, or somewhere around Naples, Florida. So I looked up photographers in Florida, tracked down this photographer, sent him part of my manuscript, and asked him if he'd pass it on to Robert Ludlum. Robert Ludlum got it, responded. I have replies, 2 letters, personal letters from him, handwritten. And he said, I can't, for litigious reasons in the States, I can't read this. But he said, why don't you send it to my agent? Here's his name and contact information. His agent said, no, I'm not taking anybody else on right now. And but here's a couple of names in New York. Call these guys. So I ended up phoning, which out of the blue, which you're not supposed to do, one of the top agents in New York, and had a chat. And he said, send me an outline, some of your stuff. I did. And we talked. And he said, look, this international intrigue's dead. Unless your name's Ludlum or Carey, it's over. And your book is international. It doesn't take place in the States. There's the White House isn't going to be blown up. I mean, it does take place in the States, but it wasn't, it's not focused solely in the States.
Yeah.
And then he or the other agent said, you know what, your book's about the Middle East because part of it takes place in Tehran, part of it took place in Taiwan, some of it in Paris. It was all over the place, New York. And they said, this could be the best. I'm not even going to open it. This could be the best book I've ever read, but there isn't a publisher in the States who will touch anything that's about the Middle East right now. So it went on the shelf, and that was the end of it. But it got me into talking to all these people and finding things out. And then I took a course and found out everything I did, you're not allowed to do. It's forbidden in the publishing industry. So it was quite an experience.
I love that. That's a great story.
Yeah, it is too. And I think that gives me an idea for you to write your next book, is just write that everything you're not supposed to do in the world of publishing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you want me to go on this, or do you have other questions you want to ask? Because there's another interesting story out of that Ludlum interchange.
No, it's
Sure,
totally
go ahead.
Okay. You know how the popular thing right now is a top author like James Patterson writing a book with.
Yep. Co-authoring,
Yeah.
Co-authoring with not just other people, but now it's famous people. Dolly Parton's done one. Hillary Clinton's done one.
Sure.
Right. One was with Canadian author
David Kelly.
Coming.
Anyway, back when I was communicating with Robert Ludlum, I said to him, you know what? There's this guy named, what's his name? I always forget it. The 1 Minute Manager. I don't know if you guys remember this book. It was a business book, a parable book, one of those story ones popular in the 80s. And he became famous on this 1 Minute Manager, and he came up with the 1 Minute Parent, and you know how that goes on and on.
Mm.
But he also came out with a whole series of books, none of which he wrote, but his name went on it, and it was always him with someone. And one of the people, like family, knew this person. He's out of Winnipeg, Sheldon Bowles, and he wrote 2 or 3 books, which were, he wrote them, but the other author's name went on it, you know, with so and so. So it was a great idea because new authors were getting their stuff published. The no name didn't have to do anything, just, you know, maybe review it, make sure they didn't have a problem with what their name was going on. And then they slapped the name on. There was instant fame. The book got into all the businesses. I mean, it was brilliant. So I made that suggestion to Robert Ludlum. Why don't you and I write a book? And your name will go on it. It'll be with Bruce Hanson. And he came back, said, no, he said, I'm ill. I've got some medical issues, and I've already behind on my contracts, the commitments I made to the publishing company. I'm just not prepared to do that at this time. But after he passed away, or possibly even before, but I think it was after he passed away, of course, Robert Ludlum came out with books that were now co-authored by other people. And then that spread to other people, to James Patterson, everybody else. So I like to believe, even if it's not true, I like to believe that I was the catalyst that started that whole movement.
You planted the seed.
And I would love,
Yeah.
I would love to have a buck for every book that went out that way.
Oh my God. You
as
beat that.
credit, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it didn't work for me. So.
Oh boy. But that's really cool though. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was a great experience, and it was great. I only had 2 or 3 interchanges with Robert Ludlum, but it was, I mean, it was amazing that you could go to somebody secretly through these alternate pathways to find him, and the guy would write back and talk and discuss stuff. So yeah, it was great experience. But that book, one day maybe I'll rewrite. It took place in the future in 2028. So,
Oh, hurry!
Yeah,
I could still pull it off the shelf and maybe do something with it.
Yeah, the future's almost now.
But
Yeah.
that's where it all started.
So one of the things I noticed on your website, Bruce, is you studied improvisational acting.
Yes.
And appeared on several TV shows.
Well, as a background actor, an expert.
Right. Yeah. But you also say that you're an introvert.
Yes.
Which a lot of authors are, including myself. And so I was just wondering, how did you manage it? How did you make that transition? Because it sounds absolutely terrifying to me.
It was. It was. I was always fairly shy, very comfortable with people I know. You know, then I'll blab on, especially if I've had a beer or two. But in high school, I couldn't get up in front of class to speak to anybody. And I think it's great that the kids in school today, and starting in kindergarten, in grade 1, they get up and do presentations. I think that's fantastic. I just couldn't do it. I had to get in front of the stage, up on stage once in high school, because I was the social committee chair, and I had to announce the spring dance or whatever it was, one of the dances. And I walked out on stage. I have no idea what I said. When I walked off, I was a total blank. I don't know if I said anything, but nobody said something after, so I must have spoken. Total blank. But when I was working, got into a career, I've always had this thing in the back of my mind to be an actor, but you can't get in front of people and talk. It's kind of a difficult thing. Silent movies went out of fashion a long time ago. So. But I looked at work, and I was in an engineering direction, and it was IBM, a sales company. The only way I can move ahead in this company is through sales. And to do that, I've got to be able to talk to people and to give presentations and, do that sort of thing. So I went and took a night school course called Acting for Non-Actors, continuing ed thing. And we didn't really do that much acting, but it got me thinking. And then a friend of mine mentioned Second City. I was living in Toronto at that time. And it took us a year to convince each other to go, but we signed up for Second City. I ended up doing 3 levels of their improv program. And then the two of us did an improv 10-day intensive or 10-week intensive with Dave Thomas, Doug McKenzie from the Great White North for the older group. So I was, working with the real hoser. And it was, I had so much fun. It opened my eyes. It pushed me so far, those courses, so far out of my comfort zone. But I did it. And that was the key thing. And I got out doing public speaking and doing courses in IVM, teaching them, doing seminar leader stuff, and in front of customers, which is why I did it. And I just kept building and building on that. But I did it as a personal challenge. I took on a personal challenge every year. And that was one of the challenges, was to get out there. So it was amazing. And the 10-week intensive.
Yeah.
He didn't tell us. There were 3 of them teaching it. And Dave Thomas was part of an improv group called the Illustrated Men, which was the most polished, incredible improv group I've ever seen. And so we get to the 9th class. We got 1 left. And at the end of the class, he says, okay, your next class is going to be in front of a live audience at such and such pub in Scarborough. And be there by whatever time. And the doors will be locked except to people who are invited, family and friends. But you're doing a live performance, improv, no script. And that was the scariest and worst and most embarrassing thing I've ever done in my life. Wow. I'm so glad I did it, but I will never, ever do it again.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I was just petrified. But
yeah, my nerves would be through the roof. Oh my God.
But I did go out on stage and I did something and said something a couple of times. So, yeah, but it's amazing. And I encourage anybody, I don't care what field you're in, take improv acting. It will help you on so many levels. So, and I think that's why I'm a pantser. I found out that I could start thinking that way.
I was going to ask you, do you think that actually impacted your pantsing, like made it a little bit easier or anything?
Yeah, I can't say for certain, but very possibly.
Sure.
That's amazing.
It is. I don't think I could ever bring myself to do something. I would be too shy, I think, even if I wanted to.
Well, I don't know. I think, like you said, you challenge yourself to do this, and now it got you out of your comfort zone. And every time you do something like this, you get just a little bit easier doing it. And look at Christy now. Like before I met Christy was doing these kind of shows with different people all the time. And you do it so well. And I was very uncomfortable. I didn't think I could do anything like this. I was afraid to do an interview at one point. I didn't sleep for a couple of nights after I booked my first interview, and I emailed them back, said I'm not doing it. And 6 months later, I realized I got to do this. If I'm an author, I got up my author career. But it's just something that you do, and I think the biggest part that we need to do as introverts is get over ourselves, and don't worry about what people think about ourselves. I think that's the biggest fear, is we're worried that people are judging us or whatever when we're trying to talk and fumble through our words. I'm supposed to be an author, so you think that I could speak very well, but that's not always the case. As an introvert, I know what I want to say to you face to face, but when we have a conversation, especially if I don't know you, I just all of a sudden, like right now, I start losing my train of thought, and I start not knowing what I can't convey what I actually want to say to you. But every time we do something like this Lurking for Legends we've been doing for a couple of years now, and I still once in a while get apprehensive about coming on here, but once you're on here, you just go. And every time I come on here, it's a little bit easier. So absolutely challenge yourself. And if you're in your comfort zone, I don't think you're challenging yourself. So
yeah, definitely.
That's great that you do that. So speaking about challenging, I think we should move into this other segment of our show today. Because you're a returning guest, we've asked you to do a live read with us. So we've invited you to give us an excerpt excerpt. How do you say that word? Excerpt. That's a tough one. We put an
Excerpt.
E and an X and a C and a P and all these other stuff. Crazy word. Anyway, so we're going to read an excerpt. We're going to read a piece of Bruce Hanson.
Give me a moment, please.
Yes.
I'm
Oh,
already
there he is.
excited.
So Dave's getting ready. So
Yeah.
while he's doing that, Bruce, why don't you do the intro, and you can let us know. You can set up the scenes and stuff like that, and however you want to introduce it. And
Sure.
the rest of us will get ready.
Sure. And I've got some stuff for the second part of the reading.
Me too.
And I even brought my, not mine, but a snowmobile helmet.
I love it.
I won't be able to read with it on, unfortunately, because I tried reading it and recording, and it muffles the voice. So I think I'm going to leave it off, and I brought a few other things I'll put on instead.
That's
But,
great.
sure. So we're going to read from a novella called Double Cross that came out in July. And it is a winter story of mystery and adventure set on the edge of Manitoba's Riding Mountain National Park, which is about a 3-hour drive from Winnipeg. It's written as a young adult book. However, I'm finding from people who've read it before and after publication that adults like it. In fact, I've had people all the way from 10 years old to older than me who like it. You guys are looking great. So I'm going to start off with a bit of a plug here by reading you what some people have written about it, both pre and post publication. So just to give you an idea, and then I'll give you the background, and we'll go into the first of the readings. If I can do this with a straight face, looking at you guys.
I can't look away.
I think Dave looks like a full patch member there.
Perfect. So I contacted an author in Vancouver who I did not know. I had been on a seminar that she was speaking at. Her name is Shelley Hitchka. She's out of Vancouver. And am I back? Hello?
Yeah, you're good now.
I can see and hear you guys. Okay, we'll try again. So Shelley Hitchka is a Canadian author out of Vancouver. She's written 11 young adult novels. She's been shortlisted for a Governor General's Literary Award with her novel Sister Wife. And she read Double Cross and said, "What a page turner. This was a gripping story, an unusual, interesting setting, wonderful, well-rounded characters. The pacing was excellent." Rachel Churcher, out of England, author of the award-winning series, YA series, Battleground series, wrote, "The teenage characters are beautifully written. Through adventure, fear, and danger, their individual personalities shine through. I was hooked from the first page." Pauline Reed, out of New Zealand, a book reviewer, wrote, "I'm just gobsmacked amazed." The gobsmacked got me. I'm just gobsmacked amazed at the author's imagination, writing skills, and his sense of adventure and plotting skills that had me on the edge of the couch. This is a YA novella full of heaps of adventure. I had to pause and go outside to catch my breath as such tension was mounting in the cave. This is also a book that adults that are young at heart would enjoy too. Sarah Albert, 11 years old at the time of reading, a fun, suspenseful read and creative plot twists and interesting characters. I asked her, "Would you recommend this book to others?" She said, "Big yes." And finally, and there's others, you can go on Goodread, Steve Ryan out of the USA. Double Cross is the perfect young adult mystery novel for ages 12 to 17 or older, if you're an adult who loves to read young adult novels like I do. This is a self-published novel, but don't let that dissuade you. Unlike many self-published books, this is professionally written. That's the end of the commercial. But I feel so, I mean, it's really encouraged me and got me moving and wanting to do more and get out there with it, because the feedback has been really, really positive. So I'll start off by setting the stage by reading the back cover blurb, and to give people listening a general idea. So, glistening snow-covered forest trails may look like a winter wonderland, but a forest can also hide secrets from the past. Matt a fun-loving high school student, joins his twin sister Ashley and their best friend Sadia for a weekend of snowmobiling and cross-country skiing. Their first outing takes them to the site of a recent explosion where Matt stumbles upon a small gold cross emblazoned with the fleur-de-lis. A retired curator identifies the origin of the true value of the cross. That night, the cross is stolen. The three teens have their suspicions about who the culprits are, but when they go back to the explosion site to look for clues, they set off a chain of events that puts all their lives in danger. So we're going to read from two chapters. First, from chapter 2. And Matt, Ashley, and Sadia are in the Winnipeg bus depot, where they watch and joke about some of the other passengers who are also waiting to get on the bus, one of whom is a leather-vested, bearded biker. As the departure time approaches, his name is Chuck, not David, but Chuck. As the departure time approached, they go stand outside on the platforms, they get a good seat and are successful. The girls take the premium front row seats, while Matt takes one of the two seats behind the girls with the agreement that they will rotate seats each hour. So everyone gets a chance at the best view through the front windows. But Matt is the narrator and begins the section we're about to read. And this section introduces the character Chuck. I'll be Matt as the narrator. David is going to be Chuck the biker. Richard will be reading Matt's dialogue. And Christy will have one line, I think, as Sadia. I think it's Sadia she'll be doing. And in the second reading in chapter 4, she will be reading for both Sadia and Irene, Sadia's aunt. So we'll begin with this excerpt from chapter 4, or chapter 2, My Buddy the Biker. The rest of the passengers streamed on the bus. The last to climb up the steps and poke his bushy head into the warm air was the biker. He stood there for a moment, scanning the full bus, then clomped down the aisle. I relaxed until a giant hand landed on the top of my seat. I looked up. Another paw clamped onto the back of Sadia's seat, blocking any chance of escape I might have had. The biker glared at me.
The bus is full. So, bro, if that seat beside you isn't taken, it looks like you and me are going to be traveling buddies.
I got up to let him squeeze in. Leaning forward in the aisle, I whispered to the girls.
So, which of you wants to enjoy his company when we switch seats?
They pointed at each other and said,
She will.
The bus started out of the station. The biker cleared his throat, swallowed, and grunted.
So you a student?
Yeah.
High school?
Yeah.
How old?
I paused. This was beginning to feel like an interrogation, but I answered.
17.
Ever been in trouble?
Little.
Do yourself a favor. Finish school. Stay in your lane. Trouble ain't worth it. I got mixed up with some bad dudes and ended up in prison. Ever been in prison?
I looked at him like he was on drugs, and maybe he was. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand.
I mean, as a visitor, I mean.
No, neither way.
I wanted my lack of prison experience to be perfectly clear. He got a little glassy-eyed, like he was recalling a vacation in Hawaii.
I was in Stony Mountain Pen.
What did you do?
I immediately wished I hadn't asked. This conversation was getting way too friendly.
Nothing much. Me and my buddies robbed some gas stations.
He looked out the window.
I'm not into that stuff now. I took some courses in the summer, got my high school diploma, and found my calling.
I felt my eyes involuntarily widen.
You got religion?
No, nothing like that. Since I had this natural lack of palming things, I decided to put the skill to good use. I learned magic.
You're a magician?
Even I heard the doubt in my voice. He became surly. It was as if his dark eyes were growling.
That's what I said. You got problems with your ears?
He thrust a large hand at my head. I froze. He tugged my earlobe, pulled out a loonie, and then barked.
There's more where that came from.
Another half a dozen coins followed the first. I stiffened with the realize that this dude might be a few badly cracked eggs short of a dozen. If I upset him, he could break my neck in a second. Why was I still sitting there? Why? Because jumping up and screaming didn't seem like an option either. His thick fingers came from my face. Every muscle of my body spasmed. My hands clamped onto the armrests. He yanked a $5 bill from my mouth, wedged it under my right palm, and said,
Here, I think this is yours. You must have misplaced it.
His eyes narrowed, his head tilted, his expression now one of concern.
Are you always this uptight? You should think about taking up a meditation.
He slammed back into his seat, laughing. I released my breath.
You really are a magician.
You didn't believe me? See, that's the problem with this world. Too many stereotypes. You should see the look on the faces of suburban housewives. They open the door to welcome the magician for little Bobby's or Stephanie's birthday party, and they see me standing there. One of the best tricks is turning new mothers to stone.
And that's the end of that excerpt.
That was awesome.
That was great. Really enjoyable.
Very good, group. And no rehearsal.
No rehearsal.
I know it's better that way.
Maybe it showed a little, but hey, no, it was really good. Much better than I thought it would go. So we'll move on to the second one. This is out of chapter 4 called Crash Test Dummies. And as I was mentioning, the helmet has to go to the side, but what can we do here? Let's see. We'll just get all bundled up for the ride.
You're making me cold just looking at you.
See if I can get these on. There we go.
Christy looks like she's going sledding.
Yeah, how about that? Okay, so in this chapter, sorry.
Blue light for cold.
Yes, we should do that. Yeah.
Let's see if I can straighten this out. I'll put it under my chin. In this chapter, Matt, Ashley, and Sadia have arrived in the town of Wasagamine, Manitoba. They've been picked up by Sadia's Aunt Irene, who they'll be staying with for the weekend in her new cabin in the forest, which is definitely more than a cabin. That afternoon, they get a lesson on driving snowmobiles and head out on the trails to check out the site of an explosion in the woods not far from one of the local highways. Aunt Irene is leading the way with Ashley sitting behind her on one of the skidoos, while Sadia, who's got some previous experience driving a snowmobile, is following her, with Matt riding as passenger on her sled. They have short-range headsets in their helmets that allow the riders to talk to each other. So this has a lot of narrative in, so I'll be doing a fair amount, but we'll be hearing from Matt and some dialogue, and from Christy in terms of being Sadia and Aunt Irene. So here we go. After a brief stop at a branch in the trail, we veered onto the left fork and got to cruising speed. Sadia let Irene and Ashley pull ahead a safe distance, as we'd been instructed to do in our lesson. A couple of kilometers along the trail, Aunt and sister dropped from view as they started down an incline. When we reached the crest, they were close to the bottom of a fairly steep slope. Sadia gave the throttle a short burst, and we careened over the edge in pursuit. My stomach rose, almost like being on a small roller coaster. The machine gripped the snow beneath us, and we accelerated down the hill. The trees flew by. It was amazing. I clenched Sadia's waist. I so wanted to drive. Irene was approaching a right turn at the bottom. The brake lights went on. The machine's back end fishtailed. Irene must have then hit the gas because the skidoo lurched forward, straightening out, and for a second, hugging the inside bank of the turn. Her left hand flew out for a second, waving wildly.
What's that about, Sadia?
Don't know.
Irene's voice screamed through the earphones.
Stay right. A sled coming at high speed. Stay right.
Sadia released the accelerator.
Someone's on the trail.
She turned the handlebars to move us over. She hit the brakes hard, too hard. The machine broke loose. The rear skidded sideways towards the center of the trail. I leaned uphill, trying to keep the skis and track from catching an edge and flipping us. Sadia did the same.
Shit!
She fought the handlebars, but the snowmobile had a mind of its own. We continued sliding at an angle down the trail. Sadia leaned into the controls, her voice tense, her words running into each other.
I can't stop it.
We plowed a thin layer of snow ahead of us. The path we left behind glistened, bare ice. I glanced down the hill. A single headlight flew into view from around the bend, passing Irene's sled. The oncoming driver's feet were anchored to the runners, hands glued to the handlebars, while the rest of his body was cantilevered over the middle of the trail in an attempt to counteract the centrifugal force. He passed so close to Irene's skidoo that his hip nicked Ashley, nudging her to the right. He straightened out, now aimed directly at us. Our machine continued its angular slide. The oncoming headlight filled my vision. Sadia's voice echoed in my helmet.
Lean into the hill. We're going to roll.
I clamped my fingers around the seat strap and bent so far to the right my shoulder was mere centimeters from the ice. Our snowmobile slowed as a result of the effort, but the rear end shifted even further into the trail. The other sled didn't slow down. It sped up. So did my speech.
He's heading for the space behind me. There's no way he'll fit. Not a chance.
20 meters away, his outside ski bit into the bank. At this speed, he'd be on us in seconds. Our skidoo rocked, slipped a bit, then held its place. I loosened my grip, ready to eject. I screamed.
Should we jump?
No, no time to get clear. Lean forward.
I slammed into Sadia, my chest pinning her to the windshield, my body shaking, my head cranked sideways, eyes wide. The other sled now 15 meters away. As if defying gravity, it hugged the almost vertical embankment. The driver practically stood on the side of his machine to keep from rolling. The sun glinted off the black faceless visor. 10 meters. He yanked the handlebar. Somehow the machine found the top of the embankment, hitting an ice crock. Its front end rose into the air. 5 meters. The driver stretched over the sled's cowling like a ski jumper leaning over his skis. 2 meters. The machine slammed back on the snowbank, angled towards the trail, towards us. Its skis began to leave the embankment, chattering against the snow like giant teeth snapping their way towards a feast. His ski tip was over our lift bar. I stiffened, closed my eyes, waited for the sickening crunch. And that's the end of chapter 4.
Bravo. That was very exciting.
I will decloak.
There's a lot of tension at the end. Wow.
There was, yes. I like the way you read that quicker and quicker and quicker.
Yeah, that was good. That was really good.
Well, thank you. Well, that's one of the tenser, exciting parts in the story. There's several, and something I did on this one, I went and got permission for lyrics of a Jess Glynn song from a Jess Glynn song, and I told I'll be there. So those short lyrics are in the book, and they're extremely appropriate in the cave scene, which was referenced in one of the quotes. So.
Our good friend Jorge de Jesus. I'm probably screwing your name up, Jorge.
Jorge.
I apologize. He was listening along, and he's commenting that he loved the kinetic
acting.
the snowy tension. He said he loved it. Oh, thank you.
Thanks, JD.
Well, yes, thank you.
Disturbed my camera.
So this book it's out now?
Yes, it's available on Amazon in ebook or paperback. I have not had a chance to get it out through any other channels. I've been busy on some things, including the municipal elections around here. So I'm hopefully get back on that and get it out through Ingram Sparks and get it into some of the other stores.
And when did you
My
release it?
camera is not playing today.
But yes, you can get it. You can get it through Amazon.
Ooh.
Well, thanks, Marilyn.
Thank
you,
you,
Marilyn.
Marilyn.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. We always enjoy doing the live reads. It's
so
nice
much
when
fun.
we have returning authors because then we invite them to do live reads with us as well. So maybe we should just have returning authors every month now, and we'll just do live reads every day.
We could do more. The link for this book on Amazon is down below on all of our channels, no matter where you're watching. So if you want to check out the book on Amazon, it's right there.
And you can always just go on Amazon and search for Double Cross, but put in Hanson or Bruce Hanson. If you don't, it comes up with Double Cross by, I don't know, some other dude, James Patterson.
Gee.
Well, I was going to say that. You mentioned James Patterson earlier, and as soon as I saw the title Double Cross, I'm thinking that's a James Patterson title as well.
Yeah.
And no, that's good because when people search for James Patterson Double Cross, they will see you too. So it's, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I probably have a few more books to sell before I kind of get equal billing with him, though.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are ever going to get close to getting equal billing James Patterson, but it's nice to be shown on the same page as he is.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, that's the problem as an author is when you go to, unless you're doing Dave's story about Logan Two Feathers. Not too many people have his title names, but most title names you can come up with for a book have been taken somewhere else. And you just have to decide, is it something that you want to use? Is it a totally different genre or won't bother you? Or do you want to come up with something so unique? It's very hard to come up with a unique title name for a book that hasn't been taken already.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's worth even trying, really. You pick a name, and if it's unique, all the better. And if it's not,
I always Google it. The book I'm writing now, When Legends Rise, was originally supposed to be Heavy as the Crown, and then I Googled that, and sure enough, there's a fantasy book that was written a few years ago, Heavy as a Crown, and I didn't want to compete with the same genre because people, I don't know, I just didn't want to have them think that I'm that author or that author's me or whatever, and because one book has nothing to do with the other, so I didn't want to have any confusion in there, so I changed the name to When Legends Rise.
Yeah, you can get lost if there are too many books named the same thing, especially with romance. There are a lot of ones that play off of certain types of sayings and stuff like that, and you'll just find one after one after one with the same title, and you don't know if you're going to come up at all. So you may have to be at the very bottom of all that on page like 5 or something.
Yeah,
it's worth taking the time, but it is time consuming. So it depends on what your goals are, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I tried to make mine different.
Yeah, I don't think anyone else.
I've largely succeeded so far.
Did you Google it, Dave?
Quellation Storm. Well, kind of. I mean, I had to Google Quellation. So,
Did you have to Google Hyperion Jones and the Olive Branch King?
And we don't want another cocky get. No, whatever we do not want that.
That was something else that, I don't know if you're familiar with that, Bruce. That happened a few years ago where someone tried to get the rights for the name Cocky.
Oh,
yeah.
So no one could put it on their book cover whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they tried to copyright an actual word.
It was a big controversy.
Yeah, it went through the courts and everything else, and authors were intimidated to take their books down that had the word cocky in it until this was settled. It was quite something.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So there's a comedian years ago who part of his thing was he was going to copyright the note C, because every other note is just a shift in frequency from C as well. So
Oh my God.
you have everything covered, right? On every octave. So
that's good.
Yeah, I think the only time you'd ever get in trouble with a covered name is if you do something like something in the Philosopher's Stone or Harry Daughter, and it's if you get too close to the branding of like a J.K. Rowling series or a James Patterson series, then I think that you might be treading on thin ice. But most times it doesn't matter. My book Soul Forge, Tracy Weiss and Margaret Hickman wrote a book called The Soul Forge, and that's what my book was going to be called, was The Soul Forge. And then as soon as I saw theirs, I figured, okay, well, I got to change it a bit. So I took the word "the" out of it and I separated the words, so it made it a wee bit different. But
good enough.
They're very famous, and I'm not, but so I didn't want to compete with them.
Yeah. I had an experience with Brotherhood of Secrets. That was the second name for that book. I had originally called it Lock and Key with an E at the end of each of the words. And it was just appropriate because that's the name of the locksmith shop in the book. But, I knew that there was that huge popular series, Lock and Key. And I thought, well, I guess what's the difference? It suits my book and maybe it'll come up somewhere in there and maybe some new people will discover me. No, it came up all the way at the bottom of all of those books. Nobody saw it. So I had to change the name so people could find my book.
Wow.
So that didn't work.
My original title for the first Logan book was Logan's World. And I knew about Logan's Run, but I hadn't realized that the author had done a whole series of books in that universe, and one of them was already Logan's World. And even though I searched for it, it's like I didn't spot it. And that was what prompted the change to something which I knew damn well could not be anywhere else.
Yeah, that one could get you in big trouble because that's almost like a cult following.
Yeah.
The original Logan's Run.
And it was like the same genre and everything.
Yeah,
so it was kind of like, as soon as I realized, I knew I had to change it. But it was actually very quick. The original title was on the book only just over a week.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So did it actually go out?
Yeah. And I think 2 people actually bought it with that title on it.
So that could be,
edition.
Wow, very famous.
Yeah, that's a collector's edition.
Well, there's quite a few double crosses out there, but I couldn't think of another name more appropriate for the book.
Yeah, no, and that's a very common saying. So, I don't think you're
bad.
treading on anyone's feet there for sure. So anyway, I see we're getting past the time that we normally shut this down, Bruce. So you mentioned you have a book coming out close to Christmas. You hope to have it out. What is that?
Yeah, I've got 2. Then just very quickly, the first is an illustrated children's poem, Elephants in My Stew. It's from an unpublished collection of children's poems, which hopefully will fall further down. Yeah. And I have 2 other children's books written but not illustrated yet. And then my collection of short stories is looking for a cover right now and going through some final editing, and will be out first quarter next year, 2023.
Awesome. And you mentioned that we can find your book, like your website's on the scrolling on the bottom there, and we can find your book on Amazon. Are you wide, or are you exclusive to Amazon?
Right now I'm exclusive to Amazon, but it's just a matter of my finding the time to put it out in more places. And my website isn't up, so you can find my author's page on Amazon or find me on Instagram.
Awesome.
BruceHanson.author on Instagram.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you again for joining us and sharing your excerpt with us as well. We really enjoy doing that, and we're glad you came on our show again.
Well, thank you. That was fun.
I'm just going to save something. Here we go. And so next week's guest is romantic suspense author Anna J. Stewart. Anna's the USA Today best-selling author of more than 40 sweet to spicy romances, primarily writing for Harlequin's heartwarming sweet romance and romantic suspense spicy lines. Anna also writes for Arc Manor's I can't say this name right, Caezik, right? Kazik romance. Her first single title, Romantic Suspense Expose, releases this month. So hopefully we'll catch her as she releases the book. That would be really neat. So
Yeah. Awesome. That'll be fun.
thanks everyone. Great discussion and some fun anecdotes. The book sounds great. Read. It certainly does, Hillary. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Hillary.
So for Christy, Bruce, Dave, and myself, we hope you have yourself an amazing week. Until we meet again, take good care.
Good night.
Good night.